You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. See on that. Well, Nate, we got to the end of this discussion today. It's been a long one. We may have to split it into two parts. It's gone for 2 hours.
You might. I think we talked for an hour before we even recorded.
Yes, we did, which was nice. You know, it was good to break the ice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I thought to end our discussion today, Nate, it's been a bit of a long one. So thank you, everyone, for still listening to us. I hope you haven't fallen asleep. Because we tend to witter on about things, but we care. Me and Nate are passionate cricket lovers.
We're solving problems right now.
We're sitting here like a couple of mates, as we say in Australia, just solving the world's problems. Just talking about the world issues.
That's right.
In cricket, that is.
Yeah.
Which can be very frustrating. And Nate has been so frustrated. The conviction in his voice.
But I'm optimistic.
Well, you got to be optimistic rather than pessimistic, as they say.
You have to. Yeah. In all aspects. Yeah.
So to end our discussion today, Nate, I asked our listeners to send in questions for you to answer. That's all right with you?
Perfect.
So we have some questions here. So the first one's from the Stats Man. This is from Instagram. He says, if the US wants its cricket to be an NBA Major League Baseball level, 3 steps you would see the US Cricket Board do. What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, if you want to get to the level of Major League Baseball, the first thing you need to do is adopt a incredibly patient expectation. Like you have to, like, basically you need a 50-year plan. Baseball, for all of the overhype, all of the over talk about how it's on the decline, it's still averaging 26,500 fans per game, and they've recently managed to reduce the length of their games by 35 minutes on average. That is immense. That's incredible. So they're making they're taking dramatic action to address what they perceive as their problem. I guess that's the same thing.
And sorry to butt in, Nate, but I guess that's the same thing in cricket with over rates. That's been a big talking point.
It's huge.
So I guess that's the same with baseball with the duration of the innings. I'm not sure if there's any time limit on baseball matches.
Well, there's
my baseball.
There's a pitch clock now. Limited. Yeah, there's a pitch clock now. So in between pitches, you have X amount of time, and the pitcher has to be ready to pitch, and the batter has to be ready to bat, or else there's a consequence. And it's an immediate consequence. So, yes, I think you have to be patient. If you want it to reach that level, you have to be very inclusive, and you have to find some kind of way to make cricket accessible to people, because you can take advantage of the fact that every sport's moving away from accessibility, and you can be the accessible sport, and that would really pay off in spades. And I think you need those two things, and then I think I don't know. It's tough to just choose one more. But so I'll just say you need to have continuity. You have to have continuity. You can't have a national governing body that's going to change their strategy every time we have a new configuration.
I think that's a pretty good answer there. So thank you, Statsman, for your question.
Thanks, Statsman.
Answered it to the best of your ability. So we have our last listeners' questions from a regular listener of the podcast, Jihan. Thanks, Jihan, for your questions. He has 4 of them for you, Nate.
Cool.
4 separate questions for you to answer.
Oh, good.
They're quite good questions.
I'm sure they are. Look, you got a loyal listener right there. I'm sure they're great questions.
Yeah. Jihan tends to have his good knowledge on the game, so he wanted to ask these questions to you. The first one is, Nate, do you think the US aspiring to play Test cricket is a realistic expectation? And given the state of Test cricket outside of the big 3, looking at the varying declines of the West Indies, Sri Lanka, and South African Test cricket, is there much point in trying to achieve that goal? Should the USA be trying to mainly focus on T20 internationals and ODI cricket?
Is that all 4 of the questions?
That's just the first one.
I'm just kidding. No, I don't think it's necessary for us to. I think it should be off our radar to try to get full member status. At least as far as full member status applies to playing tests.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, full member status without playing tests is a real thing at this point. So
Yeah.
That would be a great achievement. Obviously you want more funding from the ICC. That's the biggest thing. And you want to play against the big dogs. You really, if we can get good enough to play against India and in Australia, that would be a huge thing for cricket in the USA. So it should be a goal to go as far as we can, but not by playing tests. We just don't have the infrastructure for test cricket right now. We're a T20 country, and that's
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much going to be difficult. But I think to be a full member, you have to play test cricket.
I mean, it's
that's something that the ICC have in there.
I think the ICC can over the years will massage those requirements. Yeah. That's the hope. That's the hope. So to me, I guess the answer to that is I hope the ICC comes around and changes their requirements for full member.
Yeah, well, I suppose it comes back to Americans not wanting to watch a game for 5 days.
Well, that's not that. See, I think Americans would
which
really
is generally the general perception that people have on the outside.
Yes, it is the perception, but we also have the best golf in the world, and and we'll have golf that'll take 4 days. A golf tournament, and people watch it and they love it. And so I think, look, anybody I know who gets into cricket eventually says Test cricket is amazing. Well, or they got into cricket because of Test cricket. So Test cricket is an amazing thing, but it's not going to happen here. I don't see that it's necessary, or I would love it. That would be great, but we are way off from that. And the talent gap between us and India in T20 is one thing, but the talent gap between us and India in Test, it's a whole nother thing.
It's sort of with Ireland and Afghanistan.
Yeah,
really, you can see that golf.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Like Rashid Khan, best bowler in the world and best T20 cricketer in the world, probably.
Yeah,
but in a Test, he just doesn't have the weapons around himself.
No, he doesn't.
To protect him and to make him as effective as he can be.
He doesn't have the skills. You have to be patient in Test cricket. You have to bowl a certain delivery and then change it up. Don't bowl different variations like you do in a T20 match. You're not going to get wickets.
Right.
So that's why he struggles a bit. But he's good in T20s. But when he plays Tests, he struggles, as his record suggests. But that's down to the infrastructure and the things that both Ireland and Afghanistan have to deal with.
Well, look how long Bangladesh had to go before they won. Look how long every Test nation that wasn't one of the first.
And they've been playing Test cricket for 23 years. They got Test status in 2000.
Yeah. So it takes a long time to catch up in Test cricket. It takes a really long time to catch up. India were terrible for a long time.
They were in the early years.
They were not good, and now they're good. And we don't need to take that route. We don't have to take that route. We shouldn't. And it's not our culture right now.
No, it's not
just,
that sort of. Maybe maybe.
I'd love to see us. Once we have these venues, I'd like to see us host some neutral tests. That would be incredible.
Yeah, you could do that if countries aren't able to host countries in their games in their own countries. You can have a neutral venue like that. Maybe.
Yeah.
For Test matches, like they do in the UAE.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah. We almost had that here. Actually, this is a tragic story. We almost had that here. Yeah. It's the story is that Disney was going to build a facility like that in Florida, and it was going to host neutrals. And the USACA at the time was the governing body for USA, and they were so protectionist and combative against they didn't like not being involved in the thing. And so they basically just made everyone's life hell and ruined it. So it didn't happen. That was like 20 years ago or something. So
that wasn't. No, you learn something new every day in cricket.
You do. Over here, you learn some very sad things all the time.
But going back to your Test point there, Test cricket. It's like Nick and Gabe, for example. They fall in love with Test cricket because they watched it and they said, "This is great.
It's incredible."
And they generally love it.
I avoid it because I know I will fall into it. I have too many things to do.
Yeah.
But like I know that if I get engrossed in a good test, that will be the only thing I do.
Yeah, sort of like with me in this recent Ashes series. Every test was on the edge. You know, it was scintillating cricket. England were playing, and then Australia, you know, sort of being challenged, and but that's what the Ashes cricket's about. But trying to convey that to Americans is another thing. But Nick and Gabe, got into the Ashes spirit then. Someone sent them an Ashes urn, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Replica, yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
Gabe has the urn because Australia won the Ashes. They retained it. So he gets to keep it for a couple of years, and then it'll be back up for grabs again.
That's so cool.
When England come back to Australia in 2025, 2026, because that's how the Ashes work, every few years, every 4 years for an Australian team to tour England.
Yeah.
So even with that, they got engrossed with that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
They just love it because the first cricket they watched was Test cricket.
Yeah.
It was when the West Indies played England during COVID.
Wow, really? Yeah.
Yeah. And they got into that, and they streamed the matches.
It seems like just yesterday. And West Indies, Pakistan, they did such a solid to England right there. They did them such a favor.
They did because we needed cricket. We
needed cricket. I watched those. I watched those, and then all of a sudden you got these teams canceling on Pakistan. When it comes down to it, a couple of years later.
Yeah,
it's like 1 year later, and it's like.
But they did their thing for cricket at that time, and that's how Nick and Gabe got into Test cricket.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
They loved it. So I had one person that commented on my one of my episodes that I did for the last Ashes series in Australia back in 21, 22. And he was from America, this person.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I love your channel because it helps me better understand cricket. And I was like, oh, that's nice. Very kind of you. Yeah. And he said, I really like T20 cricket. And looking forward to that and learning more about that and watching more games and something like that. Anyway, and then I think he mentioned, I'm unsure about Test cricket. And then I replied to him and I said, give it a go.
Yeah.
You'll love it.
Yeah,
you'll love it. Yeah, it was just before the Ashes started.
Right.
I said, watch this Ashes series, then hopefully that will change your mind because it will.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I love the Ashes. When. Yeah, I really do enjoy the Ashes. I follow it as much as I can. This year was hard because we had so much going on. We had 2 tests and then basically MLC started, and so it was. I couldn't do anything at that point.
Yeah, there's just so much cricket on, isn't it? In the international calendar, it's just crazy.
It's crazy.
It's very hard to keep up on things. But
true.
I thought that was a nice comment. And many of our listeners and viewers on YouTube are from the Caribbean.
Yeah,
and from the US, some of them.
Oh, so many passionate Caribbean fans. It's. I think that fan base is drastically underappreciated and underrated. Yeah,
because they love their cricket as much as everyone does.
They do.
Hopefully the West Indies can get back to their best because they're not quite at their best at the moment. They're struggling big time.
Yeah.
So hopefully they do get back to their best because they were a proud cricketing country.
They should still be proud. They should still be proud. It's
they have some great players.
Look, they've won 2 World Cups in T20 in the last 10 years, right?
Yeah. 50 over World Cups as well. They won a T20 World Cup, and they're not going to be in the World Cup this year, which is going to be weird. They weren't the first inaugural ones. They won the first 2.
Yeah.
They haven't qualified, but I think it was just a matter of time before that was going to happen.
Yeah.
See that.
It happens. It's a cruel system. It's a cruel system to get in. Honestly, that entire Cricket World Cup, that whole qualifier, Zimbabwe looked like they were going to walk in from the first day. And then Scotland looked like they were going to win. They did some dramatic things. And then it turns out Netherlands advances.
And there was some super overs and that. It was very hard for me to follow the qualifiers because of the Ashes and other stuff.
Yeah, it was good.
Trying to balance that out on a podcast. You can only do certain things. I guess that's the same with Nick and Gabe as well, covering cricket, but it's hard for them because everyday life doesn't stop.
No, it doesn't.
And you have to try and do that. So
that's right.
Yeah.
You end up sacrificing sleep.
Yeah, that's right. Like I did for 5 test matches, staying up until 4 in the morning. 3.
Yeah, perfect.
Not good for the old system. But
No,
just getting back to a normal sleep pattern.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. But it will be a bit different for the World Cup later this year in India. So
yeah.
Anyway, we digress. But the second question from Jihan Nate is, what's the progress been like in fueling the interests of homegrown Americans who aren't necessarily from the Commonwealth backgrounds, in brackets, subcontinent, Caribbean, British, Australian, etc., specifically the interest in playing at a domestic level, as well as American television viewership of cricket around the world? Another good question from Jihan.
Well, that's a trick. Most people don't discover cricket here until they're adults. So good luck, playing it at that point at any kind of level of significance. So that's a trick. So that's non-existent, I would say, at this point. There are maybe a handful of kids that get exposed to cricket and then go out and seek it and try to make it at the highest level that they can get to. That don't come from a Commonwealth background. It's incredibly rare. It's so rare that I'm sorry to report that just doesn't happen. And what was the second part of that question? As far as getting people interested in watching international cricket or cricket abroad and things like that. Here, a very good thing that I've noticed a lot of people who start to get into cricket is, obviously we have Willow. People always end up subscribing to that, and they end up following the CPL inevitably, because it's in the same time zone as like our Eastern time zone for the most part. So it's very convenient for American fans to follow the CPL. It's very convenient for American fans to follow England, because their tests started about 6 a.m. Eastern time. So as long as you're on the East Coast, England's great to follow. So that's but yeah, I guess
that's the same with Australia as well. If you want to watch a test in Australia, it's a bit different.
Yes, and I know that. So currently, ESPN Plus carries a lot of cricket, and ESPN Plus is like the streaming version of ESPN that you could subscribe to without having cable or pay TV. So you can and because of that, I think that does a good job of exposing people to cricket for the first time. Now,
and wasn't some Major League Cricket matches on CBS?
CBS Sports, CBS Sports, which you could get if you subscribed to something like Hulu, or there were a few, obviously paid TV or cable, and so there were a couple streaming packages that you could get it on. And I did talk to some people that watched it via that, and that was the only way they were able to watch it, because they didn't have Willow. So they were able to watch those 3 games, and that was interesting. But it's getting more and more accessible. It's much easier to watch cricket now than it was in 2015 when I got into it. It was almost impossible, and also cricket protects the ICC protects their copyright like ridiculously.
Yes.
And the NBA doesn't. The NBA, go ahead, take our stuff, make videos about it, do it for us.
Cricket's a very touchy when it
comes to
copyright.
Is silly when it comes to copyright. Silly.
But the only one who seems to get away with it is Rob Belinda.
Rob Belinda, I love that. Rob Belinda too. Yeah, I follow him. Subscribe to everyone subscribes to him. Now he almost didn't get away with it. He's had a couple of battles where
he did.
Yeah.
But then Cricket Australia sort of said, you know what, this is like old footage that you're never going to see the light of day again. So we'll embrace
Cricket Australia should be paying this man $100,000.
He doesn't get monetized, and he's got 1 million.
He doesn't get monetized. He's got 1 million subs.
He doesn't do it for that. He doesn't want to. Well, you can't do it apparently in Australia. You can't get profits off that.
Of course, he can't. He can't do it. He can't do that. No. But I'm saying Cricket Australia should be like, look, man, we're going to pay you money for being such an awesome person.
He's got some pretty good stuff, rare stuff.
He does. It's really neat. It's honestly that his archive is a great resource. It's a great resource for people like myself who want to watch.
Well, you can see what cricket was like back in the 70s or the 80s.
Yeah. Right. Yes. It's like, absolutely. I want to drink with those guys. You know what I mean?
Those cricketers from the 80s.
Yeah. In the 70s.
In the 70s, 80s. Tomo and Lily. And
absolutely. Love the
horsemen from the West Indies. Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very
Tomo's a nice guy. He's just a typical Aussie, that. But absolutely. He was the quickest out of Lily.
And he did a little bit of a crow hop at the end of his run up, which is a baseball technique to generate a lot of pace on when you're throwing from the outfield.
Yeah.
You watch his legs when he goes side on, his legs cross under each other.
Yeah.
And then boom, that gets his hips going. And
apparently he hit the side screen on the full. People have said that he bowled a bouncer and it went over the boundary rope, hit the side screen on the full. And that's a bit of a, just going off track a little bit, but that's a bit of an interesting umpiring question, Nate. Opposed to you. All right, so if you bowl a bouncer, it goes over the batter's head. You either call it wides or byes, okay? Sure. But it goes over the boundary rope, but it hits the side screen on the full. So how many runs would you award to the batting side?
Oh, this is a good question.
Which many people don't know. So would you give it 6? Or would you give it another amount of runs if it's, 5 wides or byes or whatever, or 4,
The definition of a 6 is, does it include bat? Does the definition of a 6 include a batted ball? Then I would not give it a 6. I give it 5 runs.
You're correct. Your knowledge is spot on. You're correct. For a 6 to be awarded, it has to come off the bat.
Yeah.
So in that case, you would give it 4 byes if it wasn't a wide, but if it's a wide, you give it 5 wides.
Yeah.
Because it went over the boundary, even though it went over the full. So not many people know that, but good that you knew that, Nate. You got to think about it, but umpiring, there's different scenarios in that. But
that's boy, if someone ever had that scenario. The thing about umpiring is you think you've seen it all, but you never have.
Now, some people, write these scenarios. I got a book that has like 300 scenarios, and you have dogs that run onto the field. What will you do? Grab the ball, stuff like that. The ball goes into someone's car as they're driving past the ground over the boundary. Is it 6 or a dead ball? Stuff like that. Open to imagination when it comes to those sort of things.
Looking for loopholes.
There's many loopholes in cricket.
You have laws, you're going to have loopholes. When many teams have found a loophole when you're appealing for a stumping. You don't have to use a DRS review because for a stumping, the batter can't hit it, but they look for that anyway when they review the stumping. So if it did came off the edge and the keeper caught it, then you're out caught, even though you weren't out stumped. So that's a loophole. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
But a very good question there from Jihan. His third question is: any thoughts on sending the US most talented players on developmental tours to Australia or England to play whole seasons under experienced Australian coaches, etc., to learn and develop their game further, maybe getting involved in grade and club cricket in Australia, or higher level league cricket, or lower level county cricket in England, which we touched on a little bit.
Yeah. This is a great question, Jihan.
Your answer to that.
Yeah, Jihan, this is the potential that minor league cricket has as our kind of domestic T20. Now we don't have really, we have a little bit of 50 overs domestic cricket, but they tend to be localized leagues that tend to be actually pretty darn good. But yes, so with minor league cricket and the right partnerships, this is possible. With USA Cricket alone, not possible. You have to have something to swap. You got to have something to trade. New South Wales or Victoria, out of the kindness of their heart, aren't going to pay for a bunch of Americans to play domestically in Australia for nothing. What you can offer is a trade. We have opposite summers. You send some of your people here, we'll send some of our people there. And this is how it's always worked in cricket around the world with developed cricket nations. Yeah. So we can hop into that too by not reinventing the wheel, by simply just having a good product here. It opens up that possibility, and that's what I really hope for. That this is something I seriously hope for.
Yeah, hopefully, because that will benefit the US.
I think it'll happen. I think it will happen. Yeah.
I know some players like from the Netherlands playing county cricket in England. They play in the local comp there because they because they can play counties and stuff like that. So maybe not at a first class level, but more so T20 sort of level, maybe one day cricket if you want that. But we haven't seen that in Australia for some time, where states aren't willing to give up spots to overseas players like you would in county cricket with a professional. You used to do that in Sheffield Shield cricket, but not anymore. It just doesn't happen. So it may happen for the US in terms of that exchange program, which would benefit both parties. Yeah. So another good question there, Jihan. I hope Nate's answered it to the best of his ability.
Yeah, Jihan, I hope I made up for. I probably did a bad job with that first question you asked, or underwhelmed, I guess, on that one. But
finally reached the last one, Nate. Question 4. It's been a long session. It's time for tea.
Yeah.
Just about. Any thoughts on USA cricket's relationship with the West Indies cricket in the context of their close proximity? Do you think the West Indies should continue to play home games in Florida, or maybe even New York, given the large Caribbean populations in those places?
If we can get a venue in New York, absolutely. If we can have better venues in the South here, where our fall and winters are mild, then I would love to see us have all kinds of neutral games. I think I've long thought that England should send players, or should send like a team or their own team here to play games in either Florida or, as these venues develop, like the Grand Prairie one. I've long thought that a lot of the northern hemisphere that wants to not have to go to the southern hemisphere in the winter, but maybe wants something a little more mild, can utilize these things when they happen, when these venues come around. The infrastructure needs to be there. That's the biggest obstacle for everything that we want to do. And I think so. I think Windies would, keep them playing here if they can. Now, not many people. The problem is that venue in Florida, the novelty wore off and people stopped going to the games unless India was involved. So that's the trick. But we do need a good relationship with West Indies. I think we can build that. We can actually leverage Major League Cricket for that a little bit. Major League Cricket is establishing a very good relationship with Canada right now. I think Major League Cricket's going to expand into Canada. Our relationship with Canada needs to be good, because I think I don't care if Canada's in the third division and we're in the second or whatever, in Cricket World Cup League 2 and they're in the third division or whatever.
Yeah.
The games are always good between USA and Canada. The rivalry is real between the players. They're friends with each other off the field, but they want to beat the heck out of each other. And so that's the relationship I'd love to see build, is the Canada-USA relationship. Because if we can buoy each other, if both of these nations can stay big, we need that Ashes. We need our own Ashes. I think people will.
It's only fitting because they play the first international match. So
it's only fitting. Yeah, we haven't played the Audi Cup since 2017, and so that's been a long time. We need to the relationship in our region needs to improve with every team, with Bermuda, with Canada, with Cricket West Indies. Yes, I'm going to say yes. We need to keep a good relationship with them. We used to what the CPL used to do would be give one slot on their team, not in the playing 11, but in the roster. They give one spot in the team to a ICC Americas player. So anyone from the ICC Americas region that was not in the West Indies, they would only pay him $2,500 for the entire league, which isn't much money, but but it did give these guys some chances. And that's how Ali Khan got into the CPL. And Ali Khan obviously won 2 championships, bowling and the power play and the death. So yes, anything that enables that sort of thing to happen. And we do have a lot of West Indian players playing minor league. Raheem Cornwall, for example, I loved watching. I got to see him in person several times. Matthew Ford, who's up and coming. Sherfane Rutherford. A lot of West Indians that you've heard of that have played for West Indies have played in minor league, and that's the kind of relationship we need to keep. so that we can do some trades there too. But yeah, anything like that, I'm all for it. We need to keep these relationships.
Absolutely. And obviously the CPL play some games at Florida during their season, do they?
Sure, and I'm not against them coming back, even though they left because they stopped getting crowds. But I think, they need to just do a better job of marketing it. That's the big thing.
Yeah, that was the thing that you need to work on there. So some very good questions there, Jihan. I hope Nate's answered them to the best of your ability.
Thanks, Jihan. Good. Thanks.
Because he did mention, Nate, that he did see the interview with Nick and Gabe and he liked it, and he's seen some other interviews you've done. So
great, that's great. Yeah. Nick and Gabe are a pleasure. It's as you know. So a couple of really fun guys. I'm trying to get some gear for them from mine.
Gabe was saying, "Give me some gear. I need some gear. I need some."
Yeah,
we've got to contact Nate. So
yeah, I'm gonna try to get everybody some gear here. I've got some people.
Apparel,
I got some people that got to come through for me. But yeah, I think we can get you some stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Nate. Hi everyone. Hope you enjoyed listening to Nate answer some of your cricketing questions. Make sure you check out Emerging Cricket and Big Innings and support Nate in the good work he is doing in promoting cricket in the USA. Links to those are in the description of this episode.